to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today's Tuesday, and for today's video, I have the second half of the batch of boxes that I've been working on. So 3 more boxes that I finished for today. I think they all turned out beautifully. I hope you really like them, and without further ado, let's get to today's video. So first up in today's batch of boxes is this cute little jewelry box on legs that I picked up. I don't even know how long ago. It has been sitting in my bump out for quite some time. It was missing the glass on the top of it, so it's one of those projects I've just been kind of putting off until I could figure out exactly what I wanted to do with it. I began by removing the knobs and all of the legs and then started the painting process. Of course, after I'd given it a little bit of a bath because it was pretty dusty. And I decided to go with layered chocolate for this box. I really wanted something that wouldn't clash too much with that green that's on the inside, and I thought this color was perfect for that. I went over it with two coats of the layered chocolate paint. The thing I like about layered chocolate is it's a beautiful brown. It's not too dark. It's just a really, really pretty color. Once both coats of paint were on and it was completely dry, I did go ahead and distress this. I wanted to bring back some of that beautiful wood color and kind of highlight some of the detail in this piece since it is rather small. Then it was time to seal it. So for that, I'm using clear wax by DIY and just giving this one even coat of the wax. And I'm just using my soft bristle brush to apply it and then wiping back the excess with a shop towel. Now, honestly, I tossed around the idea of going over this with white wax, but I really liked the depth of color that the clear wax gave the layered chocolate paint, and I really didn't want to change it, so I left it alone. It was fun trying to get my hand in to wipe back the excess wax in that little crevice, I have to tell you. Very interesting trying to get that done. Once that was done, I needed to do something to replace the glass. And since I don't have a glass cutter or a way to cut glass, I came up with a solution using watercolor paper and fabric. I have had this beautiful fabric in my stash for a while. It's got little birds. It has some chocolate colors in it as well as some corals. It's just a really, really pretty fabric. Once I measured, I cut out that piece of watercolor paper and then used it to trace out the squares that I needed of the fabric, cut those out, and then I grabbed my adhesive, my Gorilla Glue spray adhesive, and sprayed the sides of the watercolor paper and gently applied my fabric. I cut off any extra and any little strings that were hanging out, and I was kind of worried about the fabric fraying, so I went ahead and grabbed my crystal clear chandelier liquid patina, and once I had the squares all perfect, I went over both sides with a coat of the liquid patina. I know this is normally used for decoupage, but from what I read online, this can be used on fabric too, and I thought this would help seal the fabric and also help keep it from fraying. I set that aside, and then I grabbed my Decor wax by Redesign with Prima called Eternal, and I gave the legs and the little knobs a little sprucing up with some of that gold wax, and then I went ahead and reattached my legs. And this time I added a little bit of glue when I reinserted the knobs just to make sure that they would stay where I put them. So I just used Quick and Thick by Titebond for that. And lastly, I used that same Titebond to spread a thin layer on the lid so that I could adhere my fabric covered square. So I just kind of spread that out with a little brush that I had so that I was careful not to get it anywhere that I didn't need it. Made sure my birds were right side up, and then this little piece is done. My second box is another one I've had for quite a while that I really just was lacking a vision for. I think the thing that was really kind of stumping me was this hardware strappy stuff that was on it. And in the end, I ended up just deciding to go ahead and remove all of it. Just take it all off and start with a clean slate. Once I had taken everything off, the box was pretty dirty, and especially under some of those hardware pieces, it was pretty goopy and gross. So I wiped it down really well with Cred Cutter and then rinsed it well with some clean water before I moved on to my next step. Now I noticed that on the top where the hardware had been, there were some little grooves left behind. So I grabbed my little hand sander and sanded those down as best I could, as well as the very front of the box, wiped off the sanding dust, and then it was time to move on to paint. For this box, I decided to go green, and so I grabbed my Aviary, which is this beautiful kind of sagey green by DIY, and I gave the box on the outside and along the rim and the bottom 2 even coats of Aviary. I was very careful to not get any paint on that cedar inside. I really wanted to preserve that beautiful wood. Once both coats of paint were on and completely dry, I grabbed some 220 grit sandpaper just to make sure that the box was nice and smooth, and to also do just a little bit of distressing. So I went over all of the edges just with, like I said, this 220 grit sandpaper, just lightly distressing it. I didn't want anything too major. I just wanted to bring out a little bit of that wood tone from underneath the paint. Once I was done sanding, I washed it off really well with a damp shop towel, and then it was time to decorate. For this one, I had already decided I wanted to use this beautiful transfer called Lavender Bunch by Redesign with Prima. So I grabbed this really pretty bouquet and placed that on the top of it, and then just began applying this transfer with my transfer stick. I laid it down exactly where I wanted it. Use the transfer stick to adhere that transfer down into the paint, and then began peeling back that piece of vellum. Now, as you're doing this, just be patient, and if you accidentally lift any of your transfer with the vellum, just lay the sheet back down and push again with your transfer stick. Then you need to burnish your transfer, and I used the piece of vellum to do this with. This helps alleviate some of the halo effect of the transfer and just make sure that it's really well adhered down onto your piece. Then I decided to grab a couple more pieces of lavender for the front of this box. So I laid each one down, and you can see here I'm just using my fingernail to apply the transfer, which works pretty well too, and slowly peeling that piece of vellum back. I went over the lid of the box, so I needed to use my scissors. That's what was handy, just to cut that transfer and make sure that I didn't accidentally peel it or stretch it out at all. I did end up adding a couple more pieces of lavender to the top, just one in each corner, and then it was time to seal my paint. So I decided to go ahead and go with Big Top for this, which is a beautiful, durable sealer. Easy to apply with a brush, just brush it on. The only thing with Big Top to keep in mind is it does give you a little bit of a shine, but I didn't mind that at all for this piece. Now, I didn't get any video, but I did go back and paint the handles for the sides and reattach those, and I also attached a latch to the front, and I love how this little box came out. This box you all might recognize. I picked it up just recently on one of my junk runs, and I didn't know what it was exactly, but I was told by several of you that this was a recipe box. The key there is that it was a recipe box. So I started by removing the little handle and giving it a bath with some Cred Cutter, followed by clean water, just wiping everything back with a shop towel before I moved on to paint. For this one, I wanted to give it a little bit more of a springy look, and so I'm going with DIY's Apothecary, which is one of my favorite colors by DIY. And I'm honestly kind of looking forward to spring because this is one of my favorite colors to use for that season. Once I'd given this box 2 good even coats of Apothecary paint and they were both dry, I went ahead and grabbed my 220 grit sandpaper and again just smoothed out the paint all over, inside and out, and did a little bit of distressing. Now for this one, I did want a heavier distress, so I did go over some of the detail pretty heavily with the sandpaper. If you don't like distressing, you absolutely could just skip that step. Then I took it over to my sink and I just rinsed it out with some water really quick to get rid of all the sanding dust. Did a little bit more wet distressing, and then it was on to decorating this piece. For this, I decided to go with a transfer set by Redesign with Prima called Tiny Flowers. And I kind of wanted the top of this box to look a little bit like a wildflower garden. So I cut out some of the flowers and spent some time just kind of placing them, figuring out exactly what I wanted them to look like at the end, and then began to place them down just one at a time, working my way across the top of this box. Once I had all my transfers down, it was time to move on to the last steps of this box. Now, for this thing, I knew the second I picked it up, I wanted to turn it into a seed storage container, and I wanted to stamp the word seeds on it. And for that, I'm using this set called Alpha by Redesign. And so I laid out the words using the F as a placeholder for the second E, used a piece of backing to pick up those letters, and then I used StazOn ink to ink up my stamps, and then place that backing back down very carefully using the sides of it as a guide, and then pushed down the letters to make that ink stay on the piece. Then I replaced the E and the S, and the stamping part was done, and it turned out great. Lastly, it was time to seal my piece, and for that, again, I chose DIY's Big Top. Just a reminder, all of the paint and products you saw me use today, as well as the stamp and transfers, can be purchased through my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. The very last thing this box needed was a handle, and I didn't want to use the old wooden one that had come off of it. So I grabbed this gorgeous glass one out of my stash and used that instead. Think of my batch of boxes for today. I hope you liked them, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below which of the 3 for today was your favorite, and if you did catch all 6, which of the 6 was your favorite? I'd love to know that as well. If you're new here, or if you haven't already, I would love it if you think about subscribing to my channel, and then just hit that little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And please remember, if you did like today's video, to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. Just a reminder, reminder, any of the products you saw me use in today's video can be purchased through me at my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. And I am looking forward to doing Friday's video. I'm going to be getting started finally on a little dresser project that I told you guys about probably a couple weeks ago. And it's been sitting here in my cottage kind of in the way for a little while, and I really need to get started on it. So I'm going to take you along as I salvage this old barn find of mine. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you'll join me back here on Friday. Until then, thank you so much for being here. Bye.